This is Andy Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Kalle Sauerland over Zoom. Kalle, first and foremost, how are you doing?
How are you, mate? You all right? I'm well.
I'm all good. Obviously, it's good to hear you're doing well yourself. Obviously, it's tough times at the minute. I imagine it won't get easier for many, I should say, come Thursday. Just kind of, let's obviously just start off with how you've dealt with, say, the past 7 or 8 months and how the world's kind of changed.
Yeah, I mean, you say Thursday. I'm in London at the moment, so for the UK, yeah, it's Thursday. For other countries, it's already been a couple of weeks. But Boris moves at a different pace. It is what it is. Everyone's got their opinions on it, one way or the other. I think at the end of the day, we just got to get on with what we're doing. I think that's sort of been my motto through it all. If I talk from a personal point of view, it's been, you just got to sort of pull your sleeves up and do what you can, and it's not too bad. It's just slow. I'd put it that way. It's just slow, and the industry is putting on events. We had the World Boxing Super Series final, obviously in September, late September, in Munich. Obviously behind closed doors like everything else at the moment, but it was a big success. So we're in a way, I don't want to say lucky, but we're timing wise it's not too bad for us because we're in our season 3 planning stage. So yeah, I mean, ideally we'd already been starting with season 3 a long time ago, but that's life at the moment. And we're looking forward to a good 2021, let's put it that way.
Hopefully it will be a good 2021, Kalle. Just to stick with the current kind of climate though, how have you found kind of changing your own maybe business model, trying to negotiate fights because of a pandemic, and how much more difficult has it been without obviously the income of a gate revenue?
I mean, the industry at the moment has obviously got this phase when we're in this, I don't know what to call it anymore, the pandemic phase, let's call it, where you've obviously got big fights now happening. I think we were the first with a big fight between 2 continents, where you had, Dorticos flying over from Miami, you had Breedis flying in from Latvia. That was the first big global event to take place between 2 continents. There've been other, big fights before, Mike Povetkin in the summer as well, a month before, but they're all from the same continent. So we kicked that off, and I think you now see that there's so many great promoters in boxing, and they're doing their thing. Whether it's in the UK, Eddie and Frank, in the States, Bob has done an amazing job. Spoke to him on our WBSS podcast the other day, and he's cracking on with things, and it's he's an incredible character. But look at the events he's put on, So I think in Germany, Team Sauerland's had some good fights, but everything seems to be moving along. But everyone knows that it is a shitty time for boxing, but at the end of the day, we're still lucky enough to be in an industry that can function in some way or the other. And you see that there's a lot of fights being put on cards where it seems that promoters are sort of helping out, let's say, the smaller fighters, the fighters that aren't getting on other shows, which normally would be happening. So that's good to see. But hopefully this is all going to get back to normal very, very soon. And I expect that to. I believe that. I'll take this from a UK example. You'll see, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, very soon, despite going into a lockdown in November, you'll see in December and January, you'll see crowds back at football. That will be the starting shot for boxing, because we are the algae at the bottom of the pond. We follow what football does. It was the same with events. Football was allowed to go ahead with events before any other sport. That will be the same again now with crowds. And I think in the UK you'll see crowds sooner rather than later, despite going back into some form of lockdown, which is they call it lockdown, but professional sports are allowed. I mean, it's a disaster that gyms have got to close and things like this. It's for me just baffling, baffling. You know, you can control that so well, and it's got so much of a positive impact on ultimately what we're talking about, health crisis. You're telling people can't go to the gym, yeah? Now go work out on the street and run around, and you know the amount of times you got joggers passing you on pavements and they're sort of panting down your neck. Now this is, you know, you're thinking, mate, just because you're jogging, don't make you, you know, something, you know, it's incredible the amount of joggers I've had to slap off my shoulder. Yeah, run in the road or something, you know, right up my arse on a pavement. But you know, we can all moan and groan about different things in the last 6-7 months, but I find, you know, I think that going back to what I started talking about was crowds back at boxing. And I do think those are sooner rather than later. I have a sneaky feeling you might even see them back for the Joshua fight in December, but let's see. You know, I think Matchroom's pushing hard on that. That's what I heard from that, and I hope very much they get it. You know, there is a case that you've got to realise as well, is that even when crowds are back and you're going into a venue like I think Joshua Pulev's in the O2, the cost of doing it in an O2 arena when even a few thousand fans are allowed is massive. So it doesn't make any financial difference, even if they're charging more money for the tickets, whatever it is. It's not going to be a big financial advantage. In fact, I'd be surprised if it even covered the costs. You've got to deal with all different sorts of expenses, and as a promoter, so it's a phase we're going to have to go through. Though it's not going to be a case, yeah, open up, you know, pack the venue, you know, and have your regular, you know, boxing crowd in there. That's not going to happen. So we're going to have to go through that phase. That's another phase that people haven't really spoken too much about. It's not going to just come back overnight that you're going to get full venues. And it's, once again, you know, in football, they'll open up. What will they do? They'll open up the boxes, won't they, first, you know? Because the boxes, perfect for bubbling, isolating, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, is that going to help the man behind the goal? Probably not. You know, are the clubs going to really give a shit? Probably not. And but it is going to be that phase to get people back in, you know, and they'll open up those hospitality things first because that's where the money is. And it will be the same boxing. You know, you'll get expensive tickets. Obviously, the ones will be the ones that will get in first. And so don't expect to see boxing back overnight with, you know, the normal seats and the normal configurations. It'll be very different. And it will be a phase that we've got to go through. And it's a phase that we've got to go through to get to where we want to be, and that's back to normality.
Let's move forwards, Kalle, and let's move on to some boxing talk. Your boy Filip Hrgovic returns to the ring on Friday night, faces Rydell Booker over in the US, obviously on the Haney Gamboa card. Talk to me about that fight and talk to me about why Rydell Booker at this stage of Filip's career.
I mean, first of all, Filip, you know, he stayed as active as he could. Obviously was hit directly by the pandemic. He was supposed to be out just by lockdown. He boxed on the against Molina on the Joshua card in Saudi Arabia. Pandemic came. It was the quickest date we could get was in the States from the zone. You know, we were very happy that Match was putting on a show there where, you know, it's going to be, I think it's a fantastic main event, by the way, Haney Gamboa. It's a great fight. And it's a great stop for him to fight against an American with a good record, you know. He had a tick-along fight in Denmark a few weeks ago. He'll probably try and get back out again this year. It's activity. If we can do that, and he's been out 3 times this year as a heavyweight, I think it'll been a good year, you know. So, you know, it's one of them fights. I don't know too much about Booker. He's got a decent record, but I think Hrgovic at the moment is, you know, he wants those big names, you know. He's called it for him, but the issue you have is making those fights at the moment, you know. So I mean, but he's not underestimating Booker by any shape or form. And you know, as I said, he had that take-along fight, but in a real fight, he hasn't been in a real fight since December. He's been training super hard, working on a lot of physical aspects as well when he couldn't do sparring. You know, when it was the impossible to do sparring, he was working a lot on the physical side of it. Obviously, it was a run out opponent in Denmark, but it was a fantastic finish. You still got to finish him, and he does it in style, you know. And he is an incredible talent. Big, strong, athletic, fast leg work, you know, and he's ferocious and he's great to watch. You know, he's a character, El Animal. You know, he's good fun, and I tell you, he's gonna be a king of the heavyweight division, that's for sure.
Just with Booker, he's, as I say, he's got a good record of 26-3, I believe. A couple of those losses were to James Toney and Kubrat Pulev, so obviously some reputable names on there. He's never been stopped in his defeats, though. So is this kind of a chance for Philip to make a bit of a statement?
Well, on the one hand, it is. I'd like him to get a few rounds, to be honest. But yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, you never complain when your boy stops, so your boy or your girl stops someone early. But at the end of the day, I'd love him to get a sound points victory, even to get those rounds in, you know. And as you said, he's been in with some decent names, and then when he has lost, he's lost on points. So it's the perfect sort of fight now, and shake off hopefully that ring rust. But I hope he gets a few rounds in. You know, the issue with him is he just punches a little bit too hard sometimes for his own good. We need them rounds, and it's a perfect fight for that.
Some names that have kind of cropped up for Philip recently, obviously Daniel Dubois, somebody who's previously shared the ring with Philip in sparring. Do you see that fight happening anytime soon after obviously Dubois Joyce, if Daniel was to be victorious?
I mean, first of all, I saw something on social media where when it was talking about Dubois Joyce before it was confirmed, they kept on being postponed, and you know, Frank actually went out publicly, said he needed a crowd ready to do that, and then it was of course confirmed without the crowd. But it was before that someone had said, why don't you just make Dubois against Hrgovic? And I said, it's a great fight. Now, I personally don't think it's commercially a great fight right now for either. They're both on the way up, you know. I think Dubois Joyce, by the way, is a super fight, and I don't think that Dubois has won that fight. You know, Daniel's a very, very strong kid. I remember seeing him years ago. He was training the amateurs, and he was just the size of him at the age. You know, it was huge. Very good physical, but one thing, Joyce is extremely good physically as well. You know, he gets tagged a lot, but he certainly takes a punch. You don't want to be taking too many punches at heavyweight, but you know, it's for me, it's a 50-50. It's a great fight, to be honest. I mean, Frank is for me one of the best matchmakers over the years, so he'll know why he's put that together for Dubois. But it's a risk. It's a risk. It's probably a calculated risk. I guess that's how they see it. But I see Joyce as a real player in the division. You know, he's got the pedigree. Yes, he hasn't got time on his side, but at the same time, you know, at the moment he's got that experience, and he will feel he's in the peak of his career. So it's a tough one. But Philip Dubois, Philip Joyce. You can read them out, you know. Usyk-Chisora after the weekend, great one. You know, Philip Usyk, you know, these are all great fights that you could make. And the heavyweights are bubbling at the moment. So you've got the two, you know, you've obviously got Fury and you've got Joshua. As I think, you know, you've always got the big Fury fans and the big Joshua fans that all argue about who's number one. If you go by the book, it's Fury. But you know, Joshua will make his arguments, and ultimately that's the fight everyone wants to see. But the rest of the division is fascinating, you know, fascinating. And by the way, I don't think that Fury and Joshua, it's a league of its own. They would have tough fights with all these names we just mentioned. But it is the fight that you want to see. They got the belts at the moment. That's the fight you want to go and see. But aside from that, the division is, you know, I was putting down names the other day. and it's 14, 15 deep, you know. And on those 14, 15 deep, you wouldn't shoot me on any of the names I brought up. If I had to pick an 8 for a WBSS heavyweight division, you would never. You would if I picked any of the 8 out of the 14, leaving Joshua and Fury out for the moment. You wouldn't say, Kalle, you're off your rocker. You'd probably argue, oh, why is this guy not in, whatever, but you'd still be happy as a fan, media, whatever, however you follow the sport, or however you're involved in the sport, you'd still be fascinated by the 8 you came out with. You can pick them out of a hat, random, you know. And those 14, I think we all know who they are, you know, but, you know, give or take 1 or 2, where maybe fringe ones you'd argue about. But you know, we saw on Saturday. We saw a great fight on Saturday. You know, I think for Usyk was a much harder night's work than he expected. I think Dell put on a show. To be fair, you know, I think Dell did great. Thinking about Dell's sort of curve in the sport, he's definitely accelerated himself in the later years. You know, when I watched it. Saturday, I thought after the first 3, he came out strong, what we all expected, but you know, Dell didn't throw in some curveball and try and box for the first 3-4 rounds. He went straight for him, and I think he buzzed him nicely a few times. And I thought, okay, second half, Dell, you know, he's not gonna be able to hold this pace. And he had his lags, but he finished strong, yeah. And credit to him, and credit to David, and I can't ever work out how that training setup works there, but somehow they're both good friends of mine, but I can't quite work out who gets who fit. You know, Derek's not famous for his training. Let's put it that way. I promoted him long enough to know that. You never know which elbow you're getting, but when I saw the scales on Friday, man, despite the war paint, you could tell. He was there in good shape, but that he did it over 12. But you see how you can just pick a fight out that division, put them together randomly. What was it for? It wasn't for anything. It wasn't for the banana cup. You know, it was for nothing. You know, it was a nothing fight if you put it down like that, because Usyk, he's claiming that mandatory position. You know, which I'll be surprised if he gets over the Fury fight, but you know, it is his position on paper. But it was for nothing, the fight. It was for a WBO Intercontinental belt, which is a nice belt when you're going up for the rankings, but it was a pay-per-view event. So the fact that those two came together for nothing created a big event. I'm sure it did good numbers, not just because it was lockdown or semi-lockdown or mini lockdown, whatever you want to call it, not just because it was Halloween, but because people wanted to watch 2 heavyweights having a good tear up. So, you know, credit to both of them. I think Usyk will have to learn from that fight, because he didn't impress me, to be honest. And I had so much fun promoting him at the cruiserweights and the WBSS. He's such a good fighter, though. He will learn from it, but he didn't impress me on Saturday. It was bigs and spurts. He won the fight for me by 3-4 rounds. No issue in that. I'm not going to sit on the fence there. That he definitely won the fight, and he won it quite cleanly. But it wasn't the Usyk I've seen over the years, and is that because Dell made him do? He couldn't read Dell. That was the biggest problem he had. He didn't know what Dell was doing. I mean, Dell was wild. He was going at him, throwing big hooks and overhands and God knows what else. What you do is, you know, if you've got Dell's physical advantage, that's what you do, you know. But he couldn't keep the length on him, which I was surprised. Once again, credit to Dell, because Usyk is amazing at keeping distance. But he got tagged, you know. He got tagged a lot at cruiserweight, but it's different than getting tagged at heavyweight, you know. And Dell's a solid puncher. I think, you know, they were building up very much on that the knockout against the Polish guy, and then also the Takam fight as well. Yeah, exactly. Which are nice show reel knockouts. But Dell's not, you know, he's not renowned as a puncher. Yeah. So yeah, he's big. You know, he's he's very forceful in his style, but he's not renowned as a big puncher. You just got to look at the stats. Yeah? So it was credit to both of them, and I think both have got a future in that heavyweight mix.
Kalle, just obviously pick that back up there, just obviously rearranging you in your office so we can get just a bit more light on you. Yeah, obviously you've come on to probably the Usyk-Chisora fight a little bit earlier than what I thought, but we'll stick with it for now. You mentioned obviously you wasn't necessarily very impressed by Alexander on Saturday night. You thought he won comfortably, but just with that, what if using Alexander's shoes? What do you think he takes away from a fight? Do you think he's just happy knowing that he's actually dealt with a fully fledged heavyweight in a comfortable-ish fashion?
I think he'll listen. Usyk has been around the professionals and the amateurs and the semi-professionals so long that he'll be surprised at the difficulty he had with Del on Saturday, but I think he will be surprised himself with Del's performance. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he undertrained or whatever. I don't believe that in the sport, especially when they've been training that long for this fight. And I think he'll go away from it and realise he's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot of work to do, but with his skill set, he can do that work. He's not lost at sea. He can go and do that work. At the end of the day, point-wise, he won it comfortably. So he goes away. He'll have to have a different approach at the heavyweights. But then again, I don't know too many heavyweights who box like Del. If I look at look at Tyson, yeah, the man to beat in the division. Look at him. Tyson boxes. He's a great boxer, very awkward boxer at times. He's got so many different skill sets he brings as well. But an Usyk might be much more comfortable boxing a boxer like Tyson, who is obviously a phenomenal boxer, but he boxes. Whereas Del sort of came, like he said, war. And it wasn't one of those pay-per-view sales pitches. He came and he did exactly that. When he came down, he buzzed him in 30 seconds. So I think that was a wake-up call. But at the same time, Usyk. He knows what he's doing. I mean, I compare it a little bit. He fought Marco Hook at cruiserweight, and Hook is also one of those very wild boxer. Boxing's not really his game. He was a kickboxer, and he learned to fight off kickboxing, but in a way that he still is still very unorthodox. And I remember him boxing against Hook, and he quickly adapted, at that weight. It took him 2-3 rounds, worked it out, and then I just remember it was like a moment in the fourth round when it was like he just clicked into how to beat him, and every second he could land a punch when he wanted to. I didn't get that feeling on Saturday he could land when he wanted to because he couldn't get his range, so he's gonna have to work on that. But like I said, Del was probably the most horrible opponent for him in that first real heavyweight fight for him, the first test. So he knows he can swim now at heavyweights. Del, has been around the top of the heavyweight. He's lost against a lot of the top, but under certain circumstances sometimes as well. To be fair to Del, so I think it's a real acid test for Usyk. He passed. I wouldn't say he passed with flying colours, but he passed, and he'll go on from that, and I think Del will come. If Del wants to continue, which I believe he does, I'm sure he'll still go on and do. I think Del can still cause a few surprises in the scene. I really do.
With Usyk, a final question on him. On the back of that victory, we obviously know he's a mandatory challenger, but if he decides not to go and pursue the fight with AJ, who would you like to see him in the ring with next? Who do you think would be a good step up once again for him to kind of get his feel for heavyweight even further?
I mean, you could really, and like the same way the Chisora fight came out of nothing. I mean, you could look at it and say, we just talked about Philip Hrgovic, that'd be a great fight. But you could also say, what happens with White Povetkin, winner of that, these are all a little bit fantasy fights because you could say that both guys are sitting in mandatory positions and why would you go and do those fights at that time, you know? But if you're playing fantasy boxing manager, yeah, that's a great fight. The winner of White Povetkin, you know. But like I said before, there's a list of 12, 14 boxers at heavyweight where you could throw them in, and you could make a lot of great fights out of it.
Another fight which took place during the night on Saturday night, Cal, I don't know if you saw the fight, but I'm sure you've probably seen the knockout between Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz. A stunning 6th-round stoppage victory from Gervonta Davis. What did you make of it?
I called it. I tipped for the Ring magazine, and I called it. So I said this might be the fight. You know, Davis has talked a lot, and he walked the walk on Saturday. You know, it was a showreel knockout, wasn't it? I mean, there's, you know, been fortunate to promote the KO of the year last year with Inui, but to be honest, that one is and actually Donaire had a great one in his semi-final in the States as well, but that was one hell of a knockout. And Santa Cruz, we know, is one hell of a tough mother. So, you know, it was right in the sweet spot. It was a showreel. I still think that the Povetkin one was better, but you know, Povetkin was my first boxer I managed as a in my career, so maybe a bit nostalgic there.
Kalle, a lot of people kind of excited to see what happens next with Gervonta Davis. People have social media saying possible Teofimo Lopez fight. We know in the past they've spoken about a Lomachenko fight. You know, would you be interested? Well, I know you'll be interested, but do you think one of those two fights would be the right move next for Gervonta Davis?
I think that, you know, like I said, this was his fight to arrive on the big stage. The Lopez fight's the one, isn't it? You know, I mean, that's the fight you want to go and see. I said Lopez, let Josh Taylor have his fight with Ramirez, and then Lopez Taylor. You know, I think that's a big fight next year if Taylor beats Ramirez, which I personally expect him to. Still a great fight with Ramirez, but I do expect Josh to win, and that would be a great one if Lopez went up. Same with Davis, you know, that'd be so it's a nice little mix going around a sort of catch weight in that area, isn't it? You know, that's coming together. So I think there's a multiple of fights. I think for me the most interesting one at super lightweight is definitely Taylor, and I think you'll see those Lopez stepping up as well. They're both top rank, you know. So I think there's a lot of interesting fights next year. How Davis now fits into that, what route he takes, you know, I think he certainly sold himself well on Saturday. That's for sure. It's a real win. It's a great win, and you know, despite his outspokenness sometimes, he can do that now because he's just gone and done that. You know.
Kalle, just a few other things from me before I do leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening. Obviously, I'm sure you've probably seen the video going around of Deontay Wilder coming out and accusing Tyson Fury of cheating in the second fight and calling, you know, Mark Breland a disloyal trainer and what have you. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it, Kalle?
You know, I when I saw it, I've got to say, I immediately typed something that I was going to put out on Twitter because I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was like one of them sketches that they just put a voice on top, because there was a mad one a few months ago, like a month after the fight. It was a really weird one as well, like quoting the Bible and his followers and stand up and rise. I don't know. Has he been on crack, or I don't know? Is he in lockdown? I don't know, somewhere on the wrong sort of thing. I don't know what. I don't know, man. It's shocking because I like Deontay as a person actually before, and look, that hasn't changed now. I mean, you know, everyone can make mistakes, but that video was a major mistake. Yeah, I mean, make no shadow of a doubt about it. I don't know whether they've gone for that sort of all PR is good PR. But it's mind blowing, you know. And listen, I've had it before with shows and fighters, blame this, blame that, you know. But what the thing that really disturbed me wasn't the glove thing and that, and we've already had that. I mean, that is complete nonsense. But was the one about Breland. I thought that was below the belt. You know, you could, you know, even to say to accuse Tyson of putting stuff in his glove. What he said, he's some iron hoof or something going in there. I mean, if you put an iron hoof in there, the man would be 6 foot under. Whether he's the bronze bomber, the second coming, or whatever his name is, yeah, it doesn't matter. You put an iron hoof in a glove, and you got Tyson Fury at the other end of it. You know, but a dent in his face. I mean, you actually, there's got to be some sort of a wind up, you know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's clearly. I don't know if they've slept through the fact that their rematch clauses had a time limit on it. I'm guessing, by the way. I've done a lot of rematch clauses in my time, so I know how that most of them look. And I'm guessing they didn't put it properly, or they didn't activate it, because, you know, Bob Arum for sure wouldn't make that mistake in the States of misreading a rematch clause. They would have just gone and done a fight and risked a major lawsuit and stuff if they weren't sure of that. So 100% they've screwed up on something, whether it's in his team or wherever. And it just feels like a bit of a panic cry, you know. I mean, the stuff that's in there, I mean, it's all shit. It makes the stuff they used to put in the Sunday Sport look like the gospel truth. You know, it's incredible. You know, but at the end, you've got to forget all the talk about it. That's why I didn't put anything out. You've got to actually be quite sad about it, because I don't know, it's clearly affected in some way. It doesn't seem to be in a good place. You know, you don't put out things like that in that position. And just, you know, you had the rematch clause, go back to drawing board. If he would have been, and I'm sure, because Shelley Finkel's one of the great managers in the sport, I'm sure they must have spoken. Because there's other ways you could say, listen, I'll let you off the rematch clause, but I'll extend it for a year. Go and do your thing, and then we'll meet in a year. You don't have to stick to those rules. He could have let Tyson out that rematch clause, renegotiated it, changed it round. But no, clearly nothing had been done about it. That fight weren't going to happen, and for whatever reason, they didn't call it. Whatever, like I said, I have nothing to do with it. I can just read in from the outside and put 2 and 2 together. So yeah, I wish him. I wish him health and happiness, man. He needs to get back to what he does best, and that's knock people out. He does that great. So, you know. He lost to a great fighter, a great world champion in Tyson Fury, one of the greats. So get back, do your thing. You're a great fighter yourself. Come back, but don't put these things out, because you want to build a fight, but don't stab like Breland. That for me, you know, that was the bit that was a bit distasteful, but. Yeah, once again, we don't know what's happened behind the scenes, but I think to do public laundry is never good.
Kalle, just to stick with Tyson though, it's come out today that they've put an offer to Usyk-Chisora to face Tyson on December 5th over in the UK. They're just waiting for him to confirm, ideally in the next 24 hours. They said otherwise they'll move on to another target. What are your thoughts on that, if that went ahead, Fury versus Kabayel?
I think Kabayel's a probably perfect opponent for Tyson at this stage. You know, he had that win over Del Boy. I've had him box on the undercard of our shows a few times. He's a solid fighter. You know, not more. He's a solid fighter. I think didn't have that activity that he probably would have looked to have, and he could have gone on to do maybe some better things. You know, I think with Tyson, the only thing that concerns me is always a little bit when he's got the eye off the prize, but I think he's been out the ring now, and you know, he's been in lockdown. He's been thinking about fights, and you know, he lives boxing. So I can't see that happening here. I think whoever it is, you look to put on a show, and hopefully we all get that fight we want to see I want to see as a fan in 2021. You know, it's always dangerous though for both guys to take their eyes off the prize at this stage. You know, should Kabayel or Pulev should both be relatively easy run-out victories, but still got to get by him. You know, still got to get by him. Especially Kabayel, he's still a relatively young guy. I'm not sure how old he is, but he's relatively young. He's certainly young in boxing years, and you know, he'll see this as a big shot. You know, Pulev a little bit different. You know, he's been there before, and you know, but you know, it's always when you're so close to that big one. Just hope that all pulls off, because it's a great one.
One man who I never had a chance to touch on earlier, because the interview kind of went in a different way to how
It always does with me. It always does with me.
That's not a bad thing though, Cal. I actually prefer it when that happens. But just to loop back to it, one man we never touched on was Alan Babich. Obviously, he's been very vocal about a potential fight with his fellow countryman Filip Hrgovic. Is that a fight which is of any interest in kind of the next, say, 2, 3, 4 fights, or is there still quite a gap, in your opinion, between the pair of them and from us seeing that?
Well, I've said publicly, I mean, there's a gap the size of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans multiplied by the Indian Ocean, but it's all good, you know. I think we've had an internal discussion also with his promoter. They know, and let's see if they mention it again. You know, if they mention it again, we're going to have to make public what we discussed, and all good. You know, Philip's ready. He's got a fight in December, but as I've said before, he shouldn't be talking about Philip yet. Maybe he can in the future, but at the moment it's just a bit silly. So, but let them both have their career journeys, and I'm sure they'll meet one day. They want to push it, and let's do it. You know, but let's not talk about it. You know. So I've said I've said my piece on Babich. He said a lot of pieces. He said, "Who the fuck is Kalle?" and this, that, and the other. By the way, Babich, my old mucker, right? When you were in your Pampers, I was promoting the only Croatian heavyweight European champion in Jelko Mavrovic, and actually went on to take on Lennox Lewis, which were promoted as well. So maybe if you understood a little bit about boxing, you might know my name, but doesn't matter if you don't. It's not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about you and Philip, and you know the coup. So in any case, he seems like a fun fella, that's for sure.
Kalle, another I want to touch on, which involves one of your fighters, is Katarina Fanders. She's obviously gearing up to face Terry Harper for that WBC title on November 14th. What should we expect in that fight, and how big of an opportunity is this for Katarina to really establish herself in what is a blossoming and a growing kind of female side to boxing now that we've seen just blow up over this past year or two?
Yeah, I mean that's a fight. I haven't been involved in that. That's my brother and Eddie. They are the makers of that fight. So I've seen Katarina fight. She fights for Team Saudi. She does fantastic. Has done fantastically. Big star in Norway, and you know, it'd be different for her to go and travel now. But my brother's very confident, and I know that she's got the pedigree. Obviously, I don't. You know, to be honest, I don't know how their styles will gel. Okay, they're a little bit, you know, a little bit different in terms of techniques, of how that will come together on the night. But my brother's very confident, and I wish her a great fight and bring that belt back to Norway.
Final thing, Kalle, before I do let you go. You mentioned obviously you're working on the third series of World Boxing Super Series. Can you let us in on anything?
Nothing that I haven't let in you before. You know, I mean, we've got the 4 or 5 weights we're looking at. One of them is the heavyweights. One of them is a female weight class. Flyweights, super flyweights, middleweights, light heavies. That's what we're looking at. And we've begun discussions around them. What happens is, in terms of the process, so that everyone understands, is go out, do homework, which goes to, my suggestion goes to a board, and that board decides which weights we're going to roll. So first and foremost at the moment is the timeline. You know, it's very difficult to go and make fights without a timeline. So that's what we're getting done at the moment. But whatever it is, whether it's 1 weight, 2 weights, 3 weights, females, heavyweights. You know, it'll be a cracker in 2021. You know, I think we'll have a big year. I think all of boxing will have a big year. And, you know, I think we've sort of found that place in boxing, delivering those fights, which everyone gets excited about. So promise you news soon, and know that we are working day in, day out on it. So yeah, watch this space.
Kalle, that's a perfect place to leave this interview. I will leave the final word to yourself. What would you like to say to everyone who's going to tune in and watch this interview?
Well, I'm definitely not going to say what you hear Boris Johnson say. So I'm going to go with stay safe, stay sane, stay sane. That's very important these days. Stay sane. We'll get through this. You know, roll up your sleeves. Don't stop what you're doing. You know, as long as that's legal. And have a nice evening.
Kalle, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. I will make sure we catch up again soon. I hope you enjoy the Spurs game on Thursday. And appreciate your time, mate. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Thank you, mate.